The crown diamond, known as the Mazarin Stone, is missing. At a valuation of £100,000, its theft from Whitehall is a national crisis. The political pressure is so intense that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary have personally visited 221B Baker Street, sitting on Sherlock Holmes's own sofa to beg for his intervention. But not everyone in the government wants his help. Lord Cantlemere, a rigid aristocratic official, actively distrusts the detective's methods and would frankly prefer to see him fail. Holmes actually solved the mystery of who took the jewel almost immediately. He knows the ruthless Count Sylvius orchestrated the heist, but without the physical location of the diamond, locking up the thief is entirely useless. With traditional evidence completely absent, finding the stone requires a different approach. Holmes has to abandon standard detective work and launch a high-risk campaign of psychological warfare. To prepare for the inevitable confrontation, Holmes pushes his body to the limit. He is deliberately starving himself to sharpen his mental faculties, fully expecting an assassination attempt before the sun goes down. He goes so far as to send Dr. Watson away on a fabricated errand to Scotland Yard, ensuring he will face the killer completely alone. Right on cue, Count Sylvius arrives at the apartment. He is an apex predator, a man who hunts big game, walking directly into what he assumes is a completely vulnerable target. By offering himself as bait, Holmes deliberately flips the power dynamic. The thief is forced to step off the streets and into a carefully weaponized environment of Holmes's own design. The centerpiece of this environment is a physical decoy. Holmes has commissioned a French modeler to create a highly realistic wax replica of himself, dressed in his own gown and seated in his armchair near the window. The parlor's layout supports the illusion. Angled curtains restrict sightlines from the main door, creating a blind spot. As Sylvius creeps behind the dummy to strike, the real Holmes steps from the bedroom, cheerfully interrupting the attack. Holmes neutralizes the immediate threat of violence by controlling the room's geometry. He forces the killer to doubt his own eyes, winning the first encounter through pure spatial dominance. With the physical threat paused, Holmes launches an aggressive negotiation. He pulls out a notebook and lays out a flawless criminal case against Sylvius and his enforcer, Sam Merton, promising them both a swift 20 years in prison. Then he offers an ultimatum. He is willing to compound a felony and let both men walk free, but only if they hand over the diamond immediately. To force a decision, Holmes simply turns his back and walks into the bedroom, leaving the two criminals entirely unsupervised in the parlor to deliberate their fate. He is weaponizing their own greed and paranoia. By removing himself from the room, he creates a psychological pressure cooker where the men are virtually guaranteed to make a hasty, unforced error. Holmes announces through the bedroom door that he will play his violin while they think. Almost immediately, the haunting, continuous notes of a barcarolle drift into the parlor. This constant music acts as an auditory shield. Convinced that Holmes's hands are occupied with the instrument, the criminals lower their guard, and Sylvius finally pulls the massive diamond from his secret pocket to show his partner. The moment the stone is exposed, Holmes suddenly leaps from the dummy's chair in the parlor, revolver drawn, catching them completely red-handed. The music never stopped because Holmes wasn't playing it. He used a secret second door behind the curtains to slip back into the parlor and swap places with the dummy, while a modern gramophone machine provided the continuous violin track. The trap succeeds because it attacks multiple senses at once. By combining a physical wax decoy with an automated sound source, Holmes entirely blindsides a master criminal. The trap snaps shut. Police storm the parlor from the street, hauling the criminals away in handcuffs, and finally securing the missing stone. Right in the middle of the cleanup, Lord Cantlemere arrives at Baker Street, walking in with the sole purpose of mocking Holmes for his apparent lack of progress. Cantlemere stubbornly argues the legal technicalities of the case. He insists that knowing who stole the stone is irrelevant. Only physical possession of the jewel can actually prove someone's guilt. Holmes decides to test that theory. Using his practiced sleight of hand, he secretly drops the massive diamond directly into Cantlemere's own overcoat. When Holmes suggests the official might be the receiver of the stolen goods, the insulted lord reaches into his pocket and stammers in pure shock as he pulls out the 100,000-pound jewel. Holmes's intellect is formidable, but his real advantage is his absolute mastery over human perception. Whether he is tricking a ruthless killer or a powerful aristocrat, he proves he can effortlessly bend the reality of anyone who walks into his room.